This is 6 Minutes, the Seriously International Daily Newscast. It's Monday, March 10th. I'm Jacob Shropshire.
And I'm Emma Albright. The day is winding down in New Delhi while it's just getting started in a sunny Montevideo. Here in Paris, it's drizzling and just after midday. These are the latest headlines. Zelensky heads to Saudi Arabia ahead of U.S. talks. Israeli negotiators head to Doha for fragile Gaza ceasefire negotiations. And our daily quiz question is about an odd competition in Estonia. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is headed to Saudi Arabia to meet with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman today, ahead of talks between Ukrainian and U.S. officials on ending the war with Russia. The U.S., once Ukraine's main ally, has upended its wartime policies, engaging directly with Moscow while cutting off Kyiv's military assistance and intelligence sharing.
Negotiators are meeting in Doha to continue the fragile talks to keep the ceasefire in Gaza in place. Hamas has repeatedly called for immediate negotiations on the next phase of the ceasefire agreement, while Israel prefers that the current phase be extended. This comes after Israel cut off the electricity supply to Gaza on Sunday, affecting a desalination plant producing drinking water for the territory. Syria's leader Ahmed al-Sharaa has vowed to hold accountable anyone involved in harming civilians. This comes after 3 days of clashes where Syrian security forces allegedly killed hundreds of civilians from the Alawite religious minority. The death toll has risen to more than 1,000.
South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff said on Monday that North Korea fired several missiles off the west coast into the sea. It is Pyongyang's fifth launch event this year. The launch came as South Korea and the U.S. began their annual Freedom Shield joint exercises. Now let's take a closer look at what the international press is covering.
Canadian daily Le Journal de Québec led today with a picture of Mark Carney, the new leader of the Liberal Party and the next Prime Minister of Canada. Carney is the first person to have run the central banks of two G7 countries, Canada and the UK. He will be taking over for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, who announced his resignation in January after a decade in power, and high on his list of priorities is facing a looming trade war with the United States. A report by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute showed that European NATO countries increased their weapons imports by 105% over the last 5 years. More than 60% of the increase came from the US, which the report found to be the world's biggest supplier of military weaponry. Unsurprisingly, Ukraine came out as the world's biggest arms importer, with the report citing the conflict with Russia as a main driver of the increase in arms across Europe.
South Korean press is covering the decision by prosecutors to pursue President Yoon Suk-yeol's conviction for insurrection despite a court decision ordering the release of the impeached leader from prison. Yoon has been on criminal trial since February 20th over allegations he led an insurrection by declaring martial law on December 3rd. We have an article translated from Brazilian daily Agência Pública on how Oscar-winning film I'm Still Here is helping reopen cases from Brazil's dictatorship. Jacob, walk us through this story.
Marcelo Oliveira writes in the piece that the Oscar-winning film has reignited national discussions on the dictatorship. With the debate over amnesty resurfacing, Brazil has a new opportunity to hold perpetrators accountable. I'm Still Here tells the story of Eunice Paiva, a widow of Rubens Paiva, an ousted congressman who was tortured to death in January 1971. His body was never found. The movie has sparked a broad probe by Brazil's Supreme Court, which will decide whether the amnesty law applies to cases of disappearances of victims of Brazil's military dictatorship. On February 24th, the Supreme Court unanimously decided to analyze whether the amnesty law applies to cases of disappearance. The court reviewed appeals concerning criminal cases related to the disappearances of Paiva, as well as the cases of Mario Alves and Albert José Gomes Goulart, whose body remained missing for 19 years.
We have a piece from Ukrainian outlet Levy Bereg on the difficulty of Kyiv reaching a bona fide peace agreement with Russia. The article compares the current situation with the post-World War II standoff between Japan and the Soviet Union over the contested Kuril Islands. A peace treaty was never signed, and the conflict still technically continues to this day.
And from German weekly Die Zeit, we have an article about why the CAPTCHA may be the ultimate battleground between AI and humans. Artificial intelligence can solve tasks that previously only humans could solve. So what distinguishes us from machines when it comes time to prove it? It all is contained in the CAPTCHA exercises we are called on to perform to get access to websites.
We're closing things out today with a daily quiz question that comes to us from Estonia. About 1,000 people from 17 different countries took part in an unusual competition this weekend in Otepää, Estonia. What did they engage in? Is it A, a toe wrestling tournament, B, a blood sausage eating contest, C, a sauna marathon, or D, a Baltic dancing endurance challenge? The correct answer is C. The small southern Estonian town Otepää hosts the annual European Sauna Marathon, and this year's 14th edition attracted nearly 1,000 participants from 17 countries across mostly Europe and even as far as Australia and the United States. The challenge of the Estonia Sauna Marathon is simple and silly. How long can you stand the heat while dressed in a funny costume?
That's the latest from around the world. If you liked this podcast, we would really appreciate it if you would help us out with a follow, a share, and a 5-star rating on your preferred podcasting platform. For more of the best of the international press delivered exclusively in English, visit us at worldcrunch.com. We'll see you here tomorrow. À demain.